Good day and welcome back to another interesting episode of the Black Media IPTV Wealth Conference for Jamaicans who have these kinds of assets in their possession. I am Jennifer. Please take just a small 2-minute moment to listen. You will need to watch the video to the end and become a member by joining the Patreon group for private information on how to receive your money, where to receive it and by whom. If not, you will lose about 88%, if not lose it all. So take a moment to listen and watch. We are now selling a few of the assets that will pay right away. Put aside a minimum of $1,000. This is small, but at least you are in. We are a non-attorney spokes individuals but consultants or facilitator for Black Bank Wealth Unlimited. Along with my partner Bob, we have been doing this business more than 17 years, when we started with a very small amount of assets. Bob is the chosen one. He has direct connection to the top tier 1 asset managers. We would like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen and watch this video and others, and especially for your comments. Don't forget that wherever in the world you are, you will need to get your New Year's suits and gowns ready for Everton Harris hosting of another smashing New Year's ball. If you all listen to us at Black Media IPTV and Black Bank Trust, we are 100% sure that those who participated from now will be filthy rich. We guarantee this as we hold large amount of clients' asset in a secured storage. Let me tell you, if you are sleeping and not understanding that there's a hell of a lot going on. We had a hard time, kind of putting the information together because we kept ending up with pages and pages. And we had to distill that down a little bit and to complicate things further, because where we are in this process of the reinstitution and evaluation of the dinar, we think it was time to go back and take a quick look at history, because in my opinion literally took us 100 years or so to get to where we are today. But here it goes. Listen and pay attention, we are going to give it our best shot. We are going to go all the way back to 1912. Bear with us, it all will make sense, something you Jamaican party people never think of. Just like 9/11, there is a purpose like the sinking of the Titanic. Now, what in blazes do that have to do with anything we're discussing? Well, it seems that 3 of the wealthiest individuals in the United States and bankers were on the Titanic. Watch this. There was a 4th J.P. Morgan who mysteriously canceled a day before the ship sailed and left port. So, watch this, the wealthiest bankers in the United States by majority happened to be on the Titanic. Got it? Again, that was 1912. What happened in 1913 shortly thereafter? The creation of the Federal Reserve and the federal income tax. Now, the Federal Reserve is not federal and it's not a reserve. It's the central bank. In fact, it was the 3rd central bank that had been established in the United States. The previous ones were cancelled for cause. The creation of the Federal Reserve, as we look back 100 years later, we can see why Donald Trump, in my opinion, ultimate objective is to end the Federal Reserve. I'll just give you a quick overview. Since the creation of the Federal Reserve, the value of the United States dollar has dropped by over 90%, and what I mean by value is its purchasing power. Simultaneous to that, the federal debt has increased exponentially. So what purpose did the Federal Reserve do? What was its purpose? What did it do? In my view, it did nothing but hurt the country. As an example, when the Federal Reserve was created, the goods and services that you could purchase for $100 would today cost you $2,150. That means since the creation of the Federal Reserve, we've had inflation rate of over 2,000%. One of the alleged stated reasons for creating the Federal Reserve was to control inflation. So once again, in my opinion, the government just flat out lied to us in order to get what they wanted. Something else was created in 1913 was the Rockefeller Foundation. It was established to provide assistance and progress in 3 areas: the medical area, the area of education and the area of science. Well, I'm going to leave the area of science alone, but let's talk about education in the medical field. We know what the public education system has done in the United States. It's created, as Woodrow Wilson said, a thrifty working class, but it did not create what they used to refer to as men of letters, meaning individuals that were genuinely well educated and able to problem solve. But in the area of the medical field, they created as many of the things that they created. One of them was the American Cancer Society. And what came out of the American Cancer Society? Big Pharma. And you don't have to look any further than the discussions going on right now with the testimony of RFK Jr. right now in the Senate with regard to Big Pharma, and the problem is created. One other thing was created was the Anti-Defamation League. Its purpose then, and now in my opinion, based on what we've seen in Congress recently, is basically to silence its critics. Shut up and do what you're told. Now, why'd I get into all of this? Because after 1913, in 1914, we had World War I. The United States, along with its allies in Europe, won that war. As a result, the United States legitimately became a world superpower. I would argue the greatest superpower. That meant that the US dollar became the world reserve currency. One of the reasons that happened was because the United States, through the Marshall Plan, basically rebuilt Europe after World War II. But there was a problem. And that is that the world reserve currency, the United States dollar, was a fiat currency dollar. Now, what do I mean by fiat? Fiat means the value of the currency is not based on the known natural resources of a country or their ability to bring those resources to market. The US dollar was based solely on the full faith and credit of the United States. In essence, we just promised to pay you. Now, what's the problem with the fiat currency inflation? As I said, the goods and services that could be purchased in 1913 for $100 in 2013 would cost you $2,150. Fortunately, along the way, sanity began to prevail. And they decided that they could not continue on the trajectory that they were going. As Montesquieu said, fiat currency will eventually reach its intrinsic value of zero, and that's exactly what was happening. So in 1988, we established a global valuation for currencies called Basel compliance, meaning that currencies in a given country were not going to be based on the full faith and credit of that country, but were going to be based on the known natural resources in that country, and the ability to bring those resources to market. In addition, Basel compliance was a 5-phase process, meaning that as each phase proceeded, each country needed more natural resources to back their currency. So currencies were no longer a promise to pay. Currencies were backed by commodities. And during this process, shortly after it began in 1988, Iraq invaded Kuwait. And the United States, along with its allies, were able to expel Iraq from Kuwait and re-establish Kuwait as a free sovereign nation country, and basically took control of Iraq. And in order to assist Iraq for its rebuilding, central banks, hedge funds, and even individuals like ourselves were able to purchase the Iraqi Dinar, that money used basically to rebuild the nation state of Iraq. So we purchased the Iraqi Dinar when it was at a program rate worth virtually nothing. And we are about to see the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi Dinar when we're at the stage 4 of Basel compliance, meaning that we purchased the currency in order to assist a country that was basically in receivership. And now we're very shortly going to be going to the banks to exchange that dinar for the US dollar at a Basel IV compliant rate, again with the understanding that per square mile, it can be argued that Iraq is the wealthiest country in the nation. Now I've done entire calls explaining the natural resources of Iraq, the absolute embarrassment of wealth that they have. One of the reasons that the Iranians cannot get Iraq out of their head is because even though Iraq is much smaller than Iran, the wealth of Iraq dwarfs that of Iraq, dwarfs that of Kuwait, dwarfs that of the other countries in the Middle East. So where do we find ourselves today in Iraq? Well, we seem to have cooperation, genuine cooperation between the Prime Minister of Iraq and Baghdad, Sudan, and President of Kurdistan, Barzani. And what we can expect in the very near future, and I'm not talking months, I'm talking weeks, is the release of the HCL, which basically is the citizens of Iraq participating in the profit of the sale of oil. And Iraq is very rich in oil. Iraq also has the sweetest known crude in the world, meaning that it has the lowest sulfur content, meaning that it's much more easily refined, meaning that countries would prefer to buy a clean oil rather than something, for example, from Venezuela, that's filthy by comparison. We also know that the salaries for the citizens of Kurdistan for August were paid, which means we're in a good position for something to happen very shortly with regard to the value of the Iraqi dinar. And now with the opening of the budget and Article 12.2c, we see that Iraq internally is in essence operating with the new rate anyway. Now with the open market, we expect to see the Iraqi dinar float on the forex. And we see organizations in Iraq moving that make that happen. For example, there is SOMO, which is a state organization to market oil, which has to do with the payment of the oil being sent from Kurdistan to Baghdad. We also see Article 12.2c of the budget, which does not hold the new rate, but it does require a new rate, and the rate is going to be based on the cost of the extraction and transport of oil. And then the Minister of Oil, who is appointing a special commission to assess that cost, all of which is, of course, progress. We have a meeting with the Minister of Finance to finalize the budget tables. And the formula for the rate is, of course, the sale of the oil, which equals the final payment of the HCL and the salaries, and funding the budget. Again, the HCL is the citizens of Iraq having participating in the profit from the sale of the oil globally. We have the payment of the salaries in August, so now we're ready to go in September, hopefully, with the new rate. We also have the budget tables. In Iraq, again, I mentioned SOMO, which, of course, is the State Oil Marketing, a state organization for marketing oil, but we also have the INOC, which is an Iraqi national oil company dealing specifically with the sale of oil from Baghdad. And lastly, we have INOC is that the process of shifting the IQD valuation from trillions to billions. So when you put all of this together, it's as though they're circling the new rate. From every angle, the new rate is being certainly promoted internally, and we should expect to see this externally as well. So I had to shorten the call because I didn't want to get into the weeds with everything. I wanted to try to keep it as simple as I could, but I think we find ourselves where we've been waiting since the day we purchased the Iraqi dinar. And in my opinion, I think we're talking weeks at this point. Now, having said that, those of us who've been involved in this are going to roll their eyes, and I understand that because how many times has it been 2 steps forward, 1 step back? We had the issue of Iran, which always tries to interject itself because they just cannot accept the fact that Iraq is going to be a world player, and Iran is diminished as a world player. But we also have an administration in the United States, which is doing everything it can. And I would argue that the United States, more so than any other country, has influenced on what happens in Iraq. And I would also argue that of all the administrations in this country, since this going all the way back to 1988, we don't have any other administration that I would want there. At this particular time in the Trump administration, if you remember from Trump's first term, he talked about a number of things repeatedly. 1. He talked about an unacceptable trade deficit caused by countries like China that artificially devalued its currency. And he also talked about establishing an equal playing field for the valuation of currencies, and that's Basel compliance. And so all of these things are coming together. I think we're picking up momentum. And I'll mention one other thing. For those of you that were involved in the re-establishment of the Kuwaiti dinar, 2 or 3 weeks before the Kuwaiti dinar was re-established, the Kuwaiti Central Bank issued a public statement saying that they did not expect the Kuwaiti dinar to reinstitute for at least another year. Now, their math can't possibly be that bad. So in my view, what was happening is they just did not want to alert the currency speculators and the whale investors, a date and a rate because they knew that they were going to play games and it was going to create a yo-yo effect. And as many people that made money would lose money. They didn't want that to happen in Kuwait. And remember, what's going to happen in Iraq will dwarf what happened in Kuwait. I mean, I could argue that this could be the single largest financial adjustment globally in world history. And for those of us that have purchased the Iraqi dinar and other currencies, the Vietnamese dong looks very good. I mean, one could argue that the Iraqi dinar is just the first domino of a number of countries that are going to be reinstituting. It's going to be a new ballgame out there. So those of us that have the Iraq dinars, and if you need the real certified notes, we have got them that will certainly going to make all of you be very, very well off. But from my discussion with our clients, most of our clients have dong and other currencies as well. We have one client. I certainly can't name this individual. Has 500 million to dinars and 500 million dong. In essence, our vault has much more than that. If you ever notice Bob, he has a satellite following him indoor or out. The system has access to implant that protect the code for the various bots guarding the client's asset in a storage facility, unknown to even Bob or myself. We are hired by referrals from clients, owners of assets in billions, if not trillions, that must be carefully managed and distributed for generational wealth. This is what Bob teaches. When you become a member, if accepted, he is very particular. Our client with the huge asset, I would sometimes joke with the guy and I say, unless you're immortal, we can't possibly imagine what you could do with all that money. And he's got a lot of philanthropic and devices involved. And so his gain is going to be the game for a great many people. But be that as it may, I just want to take just a moment to talk about the trust that we established very simply when an individual or an organization is in a position where they credibly believe that they are going to receive a large windfall. And in the case of the Iraqi dinar, this is not large. This is huge. And when you find yourself in that position, one of the things you can do is take that asset and take it out of your social security number, which is basically available to anyone that can get the information. And you can use me there. A little problem. And place it in trust. By placing it in trust, you preserve your privacy and your anonymity. You avoid IRS scrutiny. You're able to gift currencies to family and friends and control the post-RV proceeds, if you wish. The trust will allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax by avoiding probate. No one will know the size of your estate, who your heirs are, how much they stand to inherit, and they will receive their inheritance immediately. You'll also avoid the federal estate tax, which can be as high as 55% of your estate in excess of $12 million. And the trust also provides asset protection benefits. Pre-RV, you'll avoid the Uniform Prodial and Transfer Act. Basically, if you bought 10 million dinar for $10,000, transferred it to the trust out of personal title, you can only pursue for the value of the transfer $10,000, not the value of the currency and trust once it reinstitutes and the values. Post-ARV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as which protects you from future bad acts through segregation of assets. By placing each asset in a separate sub-trust, you limit any potential civil suit post-ARV. Someone slips in one of your rental properties. It's only that property involved in the litigation, and they will test you. All of your other assets, homes, cars, boats, etc. are in other sub-trusts, which under the law are separate legal entities, not involved in the litigation. So for all of these reasons, I would strongly suggest that if you have not yet done so, contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. It has everything you need if you wish to proceed, but you're not required to do so. You can review the package, contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. I'm going to go to a Q&A here in just a moment. Live on the Black Media IPTV channel. You may join us there. blackmediaiptv.net, but you must be a subscriber. We will then send off a mo to become a registered member. Register with Black Media IPTV on YouTube or blackmediaiptv@gmail.com. If you have any of these notes or wish to join us celebrating our big payment for buying these currency, let me know. Email us will be your best bet to acquire a discount ticket to Everton New Year's Ball early bird, $175 per person or $350 per couple with perks. Receive $50 worth of pre-sale crypto that will worth big money for another means to a diversified streaming and other income portfolio. I'm sorry for being so brief today, but there's a lot going on here right now. We've had individuals that we've sent packages 2 months ago, even years ago, and the general consensus is we're grounding the final turn here. So now they all want to set up their trust, or they have some final questions before they proceed. If this thing will work here. While I'm waiting for any potential comments or questions, if you're interested in getting our initial no-obligation trust package, you can contact us either by email or phone. Black Bank Trust or WhatsApp 854-865-6595. Contact us by email or phone. We'll get a trust package out to you as quickly as possible. Contact us if you have any questions on the program, or if you wish to join us in the studios at Black Media IPTV. And again, everything you need is there if you wish to proceed. blackbanktrust@gmail.com or on WhatsApp 954-865-6595. And I'm deadly serious when I say we finally have come to a place where you were running out of time. If you want to get your trust in force in your affairs before the revaluation happen within weeks, the longer you wait, the more expensive the package will be. After the RV at even more money, best to contact us now to get your trust package in order pre-RV. I say, fellow people, now would be the time to get it done. So let's me hear your comments. Send in your request by email or join me on WhatsApp. Well, the other thing is, what is real is they like to attack Qatar. And we don't think they're serious about peace in Gaza. So that's going to. What if that destabilizes the whole thing and booms the RV? I think that it's a possibility, but unlikely. And the reason I think that is because I think Netanyahu does not want to cross Donald Trump. I think it's that simple. I understand from the perspective of Israel and their internal politics why they had to do something. I understand how people feel that this thing could escalate. But Israel is basically the size of New Jersey, and it's got more military might than the rest of the Middle East, which is basically the size of the contiguous United States. So I think Trump's got a handle on that. I don't think he's going to allow that to happen. And Israel absolutely needs the support of the United States. They cannot go it alone. So I know it's a possibility, but we think it's highly unlikely that it's going to affect what we're discussing here today. Also, you have the other things in Vando, like you have NATO going into, not just going into NATO territory. And then you have on the other side, you have Taiwan things. So any one of those could get any one of those situations outside of the Middle East. Like, it's, the big, cold. Well, it's possible. It's possible. We could have a meteor strike and we go back to the Stone Age. I mean, anything's possible. I just feel like we have the key to all of this is the administration in the United States of America. Okay. This is the only entity that can make sure to kick the curb, whatever gets in the way of this. I personally think that he'll get the job done. Just look at his track record to see what he's done. He's called inflation. He's closed the border. He's just doing all kinds of things that they said could not be done. So I just feel that he's going to handle that. We're right on the cusp of this thing happening. Before Everton Harris New Year's Ball, invest right. Paying $350 per person at the door New Year night will be nothing to pay for a nice celebration and ringing in 2026. Happy Thanksgiving. Hello, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to the pre-wealthy crew. By the way, relax. I just don't think he's going to allow anything to undo it. That's just our opinion. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Shower your wealth on others for a greener pasture in life.